Houston, gentlemen, I want to turn our attention right now to key issues involving foreign policy and national security. And Mr. Trump, I'll begin with you. You said this about the ongoing conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I'm quoting you now. Let me be sort of a neutral guy. I don't want to say whose fault it is. I don't think it helps. Right. Here's the question. How do you remain neutral when the U.S. considers Israel to be America's closest ally in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, I don't think they do under President Obama, because I think he's treated Israel horribly, all right? I think he's treated Israel horribly. I was the Grand Marshal down Fifth Avenue a number of years ago of the Israeli Day Parade. I have very close ties to Israel. I've received the Tree of Life Award and many of the greatest awards given by Israel. As president, however, there's nothing that I would rather do to bring peace to Israel and its neighbors generally. And I think it serves no purpose to say that you have a good guy and a bad guy. Now, I may not be successful in doing it. It's probably the toughest negotiation anywhere in the world of any kind, okay? But it doesn't help if I start saying, I am very pro-Israel, very pro, more than anybody on the stage. But it doesn't do any good to start demeaning the neighbors, because I would love to do something with regard to negotiating peace, finally, for Israel and for their neighbors. And I can't do that as well as a negotiator. I cannot do that as well if I'm taking big sides. With that being said, I am totally pro-Israel.
Senator Cruz.
Well, this is another area on which Donald agrees with Hillary Clinton and on which I disagree with them both strongly. Both Donald and Hillary Clinton want to be neutral, to use Donald's word, between Israel and the Palestinians. Let me be clear. If I'm president, America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And the notion of neutrality is based upon the left buying into this moral relativism that is often pitched in the media. Listen, it is not equivalent. When you have terrorists strapping dynamite around their chest, exploding and murdering innocent women and children, they are not equivalent to the IDF officers protecting Israel, and I will not pretend that they are. Just today, Iran announced they're going to pay $7,000 to each suicide bomber, and I would note, missing from Donald's answer was anything he has done in his nearly 70 years of living defending Israel. I have over and over again led the fight to defend Israel, to fight for Israel, and this, if you want to know who will stand with Israel, we ought to start with who has stood with Israel when the heat was on.
Mr. Trump.
Well, I can only say I've been a big contributor to Israel over the years. I've received many awards from Israel. As I've said before, I have a great relationship with Israel, and I'm going to keep it that way. And if I could bring peace, that would be a fantastic thing. It would be one of my greatest achievements as president.
Governor Kasich, I want you to weigh in.
Well, I mean, Wolf, I was in Congress for 18 years and on the Defense Committee, and then, you know, after 9/11, the Secretary of Defense called me in to help out with some things, and I've been a supporter of Israel, strong supporter of Israel, longer than anybody on this stage. I didn't give as much money as Donald gave, but I've been standing with the Israelis for a very long time, and frankly, I think the problem we have in foreign policy right now, Wolf, is that we are not certain with who we stand with. Our allies are not sure what to make of us, and our enemies are moving, and are moving because they're not sure what we will do. It's a very interesting development here within the last 24 hours. We said to the South Koreans that we would give them the high-altitude defense system. It really rattled the Chinese, and for the first time since we took positive action, the Chinese are beginning to take action against North Korea. When we stand firm and we let the world know who we're with, who we stand for, and we bring our allies together, that is the road forward.
We're going
to be able to solve the problems in this country.
We're going to get to North Korea in a moment, but Senator Rubio, what's wrong with the U.S. being an honest broker in a negotiation, as Mr. Trump is proposing?
And I don't know if Donald realizes this, I'm sure it's not his intent, perhaps, but the position you've taken is an anti-Israel position, and here's why. Because you cannot be an honest broker in a dispute between two sides in which one of the sides is constantly acting in bad faith. The Palestinian Authority has walked away from multiple efforts to make peace. very generous offers from the Israelis. Instead, here's what the Palestinians do. They teach their 4-year-old children that killing Jews is a glorious thing. Here's what Hamas does. They launch rockets and terrorist attacks against Israel on an ongoing basis. The bottom line is a deal between Israel and the Palestinians, given the current makeup of the Palestinians, is not possible. And so the next president of the United States needs to be someone like me who will stand firmly on the side of Israel. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm not either side. I will be on his side. I will be on Israel's side every single day because they are the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the entire Middle East.
Mr. Trump.
I'm a negotiator. I've done very well over the years through negotiation. It's very important that we do that. In all fairness, Marco is not a negotiator. I watched him melt down, and I'll tell you, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. He's not going down.
He thinks the Palestinian is a real estate deal.
And these people may even be tougher than Chris Christie, okay?
The Palestinians are not a real estate deal, Donald.
Okay, no. A deal,
They're not a real estate deal.
is a deal. Let me tell you,
a deal is not a deal when you're dealing with terrorists. Have you ever negotiated with terrorists?
You are not a negotiator. You are not a negotiator. And with your thinking, you will never bring peace. You will never bring peace.
Donald might be able to build condos in the Palestinian areas, but he's not going to. This is not a real estate deal.
Senator.
He will never be able to do it. I think I may be able to do it, although I will say this. Probably the toughest deal of any kind is that particular deal.
Let's move on and talk about North Korea.